Everybody has a story of how things became what it is.
And all of the stories that we're experiencing up to date are all based on the original mythological story.
Myths are ways of codifying profound truths.
And so in order to pass on the knowledge of these things, our ancestors began to put them in the form of stories.
Because myth becomes a way of speaking to that.
And it's all considered to be mythology because it is based on a belief.
And then we create rituals that reinforces the logic and the knowledge of the myth.
The story then goes into a ceremony that is constantly going to remind people.
That's where the rituals come in, where we begin to practice this, what they call Ausarian Drama.
This story, this African story of an African trinity, is over 6,000 years old.
There's several different pieces of that story that are in direct correlation to the story of Jesus.
Scholars know this. Why do they allow people keep thinking it's a religion unless they have an untoward agenda? And it's very clear that they've created a lot of confusion.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Tia Marie, and you are joining me on my YouTube channel. So I do thank you. If you like the content that you're going to see here today, I do hope that you like and subscribe. You know what the kids say down in the bottom. What I am hoping for today is that we talk a little bit about the opportunities that parents have over these next couple of weeks while their students are on virtual learning and probably back at home again. So I want to just do a few shout outs. So the film that you just saw before was from my friend Toby Tanzel, sharing a project that he's working with. I also want to thank my producer, Ra Asset, for helping me. So all of you tonight have joined me, hopefully. We're a couple minutes behind, so I appreciate you working with me in that time frame. Um, Tonight, we want to talk about one, if tomorrow's Monday for you and your kids were supposed to be in physical school, some of you may be on virtual school. I also want to acknowledge that the African American Parent Network will be hosting at 2 o'clock tomorrow. You can find it on my Facebook page at Tia Marie Sanders. That the African American Parent Network of Oakland County will be hosting a virtual event. We're hoping that all of our African American students that are in middle school and high school will join the conversation. On this platform, we will be talking to students about their experiences that are happening in our Oakland schools and what issues that they may be confronted with, so that we, as the parents, adults, educators, administrators in their lives, can start to frame what can we do to start to solve some of those issues that they share with us. It will be a brave space where all students are welcome to come and share their experiences, have dialogue, and hopefully learn more about how we can all support those students. Parents are also welcome to join so that you and your children can maybe hopefully have conversations afterwards. We know that many of you are participating in Martin Luther King, Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. events over tomorrow. So I do wish you all well in those activities as you honor the day and honor the man and honor the legacy. Some of the events that will be taking place in your communities, if you'd like to share it with other people, please feel free to do so in the chat or to post them on my Facebook page as well. I will be happy to share them. So let's get into it tonight. As I mentioned, some of you are finding out that your students are back into virtual school. Uh, it maybe has been positive for you to work with your students at home over the last almost 2 years, coming up on March 20th, or it has been extremely difficult. Either way, we do realize that your students may need additional support. So I want to start by having you grab a pen and paper so that you can jot down a few key organizations that are available to help with some support, whether it be academic or mental and emotional support. And I hope that some of the parents are also working together in their own communities in order to give each other support. Your neighbors, the other kids that your kids go on the bus with, please have conversations at the bus stop so that you can find out what you as a community partner can do to support you and your neighbors' children a little bit better. I remember when I first came to Novi, I had two little kids, 2 and 3 years old, and it was the other moms at my bus stop that I was able to connect with to create programs and support each other, where we were actually able to help each other pick each other's kids up. So if you're a parent that might need some additional help, it really does help to reach out to your neighbors. All right. So, one of the things I want to say is over these last 18 months of your kids being in and or out of school, um, hopefully you have received the support that you needed from the school district. Most of the counselors are available on the different school platforms, so you can actually reach out to them if your child is experiencing difficulty getting their work or difficulty with homework. I would ask you to reach out to the school district first. The other thing is there's an organization called Connect Me. They are out of Northville. It is a student led, student created platform for online virtual tutoring. So if you have students that have different subjects that they are struggling in and need additional help, it is a free platform. Please, when you go to the platform, let them know that Tia Marie Sanders sent you. They do know that we are working directly with the students that I'm sending over to them. And you don't have to live in Northfield to participate. You can live anywhere in the United States or where you may hear this in order to reach out to Connect Me, and they will be more than happy to help your student get started with more help for the studies that they have. The other that I want to let you know about, there's something called the Coalition. They do so in Novi. We are the community Novi Community Coalition. There's a Farmington Coalition. This organization offers support for mental, social, and emotional health. So many of our students, online learning has been extremely difficult for them, and having that extra support and resources and phone numbers to call for hotlines are always going to be very, very helpful. So look to either your city or your school district on their community page to find out more, if to see who the Alliance Coalition is in your community. They can offer some of those support services, not just for parents, but also for students. So a lot of their work is based on the different grades that the student is in so that they are age appropriate in their support. And then the other thing that I would like to recommend that you all do, these transitions, this COVID, the pandemic, all of the stressors, the uncertainty may have you feeling a lot of anxiety. It may have you feeling like you're kind of isolated because we are sort of pushed back into home. And without the proper support, that can also be challenging for adults and for children. So I do want you to reach out to my friends over at CNS Healthcare. CNS Healthcare is a free service for mental health for ages 0 to 1,000. They have one of the most diverse collections of folks from all different kind of cultures and backgrounds, and their services are free if you don't have insurance. They do take most major insurances if you do have insurance. They do have a 24-hour hotline as well as a online ability to do virtual counseling or in-person counseling. In Novi, they're located near 10 Mile and Kareem Boulevard, but they are all over Michigan and they offer those services for free. If you're watching this and you're outside of Michigan, please reach out to your local city clerk's office or your I'm trying to think of the other, or your city services to find out. So I'm sorry, guys, I'm having like a brain moment. Your city services to find out who is that particular service in your state. Not every state has a free mental health hotline or services, but hopefully you're able to connect with the one in your town. Okay. So now that some of that housekeeping is out of the way, I want to talk specifically to our African American parents. Over this last 18 months, hopefully you have not only seen positive feedback regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion, but if you aren't, please connect with the African American Parent Network in your district. We are working collaboratively together in order to provide services and support to African American families. I have found that the CRT bill that is available here in Michigan, promoted by the Republicans to encourage the stop of equity, diversity, and inclusion, and anything related to the Black community, equity, acknowledging and respecting those cultures and those different identities. There is a concerted attack against it. So I would like to propose a thought. It is not something that I think we will be able to do in 1 year or maybe even 2 years. But I want us to start thinking about how we educate our children so that they have not only the foundations of Black culture, but that they have the respect, the honor, and the fair treatment that they deserve while getting an education. One of the things that I grew up understanding is that children only learn, and really most people only learn from those who they know care for them, who they know respect them, and who they trust. And considering the climate of some of our school districts, and again, some are really advanced and moving forward in spaces that recognize that children of all cultures need to be respected and need to be treated the way that they deserve to be treated so that they can learn, as well as being provided the resources and not still harmed by this national, state, and local achievement gap. What I propose is that we start working as a community on how we're going to educate our children. If there's any hope that our kids are going to get what they need over the next 10 years, we really do need to start to provide those building blocks. Now, when I say that, most people think I am absolutely crazy, and I get it. You know, this pandemic has not been easy. Homeschooling your kids has not been easy. I understand. Our role was never supposed to be as their educator. We have gone through great lengths to put our kids into schools in order to get the kind of education that we hope that they are receiving when they get there. But with a 60-year long educational gap for African American students, regardless of their financial background, their educational background of their parents, regardless of what city, state, or county they might be living in. And in particularly here in Michigan, African American students for 6 decades have always achieved at a rate much further behind their counterparts. Now, I believe it is because, and just from examining and some of the disparities that have come out over the last 2 years in particular, but going back the last 6 decades, our students are not receiving the kind of education that can put them into a position to, one, have the self esteem necessary to thrive. They're not being educated on the full truth of who they are or the full truth of who their classmates historically are. This dichotomy of a miseducation is what I believe our students are getting, coupled with climates of racism, inequity, no inclusiveness, our students not being promoted into classes that would help them to excel, or having in their classrooms or in their schools resources to provide all kinds of post secondary pathways, are contributing to the gaps in our ability to gain the same education as our counterparts. The education that they receive about history is a very one sided, whitewashed version of our American history, let alone our global history. And year after year, even though we know this, even though our educators know this, very little has really been done in the last 6 decades to make changes in that area. Most educators in the last 2 years are just starting to have the battles as they try to introduce these things. And what I am suggesting is let's stop putting a square peg into a round hole. The schools were never designed, public schools were never designed for our students to thrive. The public schools were never designed for our educators to continue to educate. If you go back 6 decades, you will see where when desegregation took place, over 200,000 teachers across the United States that were African American over the course of 2 decades lost their jobs. They lost their pension, and not much has been done in that time frame to recoup the educators the value of their years and years of education that they earned in order to come and make a commitment to teach our students. If they had, and if we'd spent the last 6 decades making great strides, not these tiny baby steps, but 6 decades of great strides, we would not be today having the debates in our school districts about what diversity and equity and inclusion is, why it is necessary, and who should be able to benefit from the inclusion of those things. Some of our parents are not even aware that these disparities are taking place and that that is what is harming their children. Some of you are not even aware that just a few years ago, many of the school districts were part of a class action suit for disproportionately disciplining our Black children, and in particularly Black boys, more than any other student that was in that school. Because there are not large quantities of African Americans in the state of Michigan and probably across the United States, we only make up, based on the last census, just over 12 million in population. We do not outnumber most of our counterparts in our school districts. So our kids being able to see a significant shift so that the next 10 years, and I can only really say for the next 10 years because we really need a whole decade to shift entire mindsets. We need a whole decade to shift policy and to have the required funds necessary to make large changes in education. But in order to see those changes, we have to begin those changes today. We have to start to collaborate with other educators, excuse me, who are aware of what our kids need to thrive, to be able to put them in positions of leadership so that when we are trying to change policies, we are not coming up against boards that have no clue what we're talking about, yet, as well as no intention to make those changes. What I've noticed over the last 6 years is that the particular groups that wanted to present CRT as a viable opposition to possible diversity, equity, and inclusion, and to school districts that were quickly changing in their diversity, was I watched 6 years ago CRT and the 1776 project, because a lot of people think it was our former president's project. It was not. It was already created before he was in office and handed to him to take and run with, to perpetuate mistruths, to perpetuate difficulties with our teachers being hired in school districts, because there's a notion that there are these encroaching Negroes. If everybody remembers 6 decades ago, that was something that was used when we talked about redlining. The same types of policies are being used to prevent educators of color from being in all possible school districts. And then the school districts that they are of color in are not thriving because any district that has predominantly African American students are void of the necessary resources for our children to advance. This is not a new story. This is not a new thing that I am telling most of you about. You grew up in schools that were highly still segregated, either by community, by through housing, or through employment, because you did not have teachers that look like you in your school. Some kids go all 12 years never seeing an educator that looks like them. And as we think about why we have a teacher shortage right now, maybe it is because we spent the last 6 decades not hiring African American teachers so that they would be in positions that when we needed to mobilize education, either virtual or in person, we could do so with not a shortage of teachers, but with a larger quantity of teachers. And then when we talk about education, how are we choosing to pay teachers so that this is an attractive position for them to choose? So, I'm just gonna take a breath. I'm gonna take a drink of my tea as well. Let you guys digest on some of what I said. I want to stop real quick because we're almost at the halfway mark and just say thank you to all of you that are watching. I'm going to see if I can see your comments. Give me just a moment here. Open up the chat. All right. Thank you, Black Media Voice. Let's see. All right. Thank you, Natalie Garcia, for joining me. Let's see. And thank you, Black Voice Media. So, how do we prevent some of the CRT ideas? Yesterday, I actually did a conversation on how to join some of the local school boards. And if you still have questions about that, I'm happy to work with you so that we can talk about running for school board as well as how you can advocate for your students at those school board meetings so that you're prepared, you have possibly a prepared statement and some talking points so that you can keep your presentation very succinct, get your point across, and because most of them don't allow more than maybe 2 minutes to actually talk. Some of them allow 5 minutes, but most are hovering around 2 to 3 minutes. So it's not a lot of time to get your point across. The main thing is that you want the boards to know that you are paying attention to what is happening with your students. The other thing that I would like to talk to you about is how do we go about creating our own school districts? So there are already templates of this activity happening already. Let me see. All right. Let me just take a look at the screen comment. All right. You answered my question. How can we prevent this? Put people in positions that can help minimize the threat. Yes, so one of the ways to put people into position, thank you, Black Media Voice, is to be a little bit more engaged in how you go about finding out about the curriculum at your kid's school, finding out about what is on the agenda in the agenda packet that is published on usually your school district's website a few days before the actual board meeting. There's also curriculum programs that take place at your school when they're deciding what type of curriculum are they going to present to your child and what that curriculum looks like so that you are aware of how your child shows up and is represented. What I also want us to do is to start to collaborate in our communities with either the African American community, African American network, parent network in your area, or with other either social justice, racial justice groups who are devising policies and plans to to put together education resources so that we can have our own school. Since school is virtual, hopefully all of you have now seen that having a school with brick and mortar is not the only way to learn. Since 1992, we have been offering virtual classes to our college students for teachers to become more educated and to get their masters, for some certain corporations and executives to get additional background and education so that they can get their PhD and their masters. So we have spent over 3 decades really getting comfortable in other areas with virtual learning. The one place that we have not done that until we were forced to do it was in the pre elementary, middle school, and high school. And the problem that most of us experienced was really due to the fact that the resource was available to us for over 3 decades, but we were not put in a position to have alternative ways of learning for our children given any circumstance. We have also used virtual learning when there have been natural disasters. When Katrina happened a few years back, most of our students who were displaced either by physically losing their actual home or having to be moved into another state were still able to work with their educators via online learning and still be successful. We need a similar model. The same way that we do not know what tomorrow promises, we need to start working today on what it looks like for us, the Black community, to educate our students the way that we know they will thrive the most. I would like to share with you a couple of models that happen right here in my neighborhood and in my county that have been doing this and teaching their kids in a brick and mortar setting as well as a virtual setting. So the first that I would like for us to start with, let's take a look here. And just let me remind you all, please take a look at our chat for not only ways to contact me at the Tia Marie Sanders YouTube page, but also if you would join me on Facebook. And if you look at the bottom of the screen, you will also see information on how to help support financially. That's the other really big missing piece. Most of your organizations that are in your community would love to do more, but they're currently pulling funds out of their own pocket. I believe that if we were to contribute $10 to $100 a month to those organizations that are Black led, that are doing the work so that you can continue to be at work and not have to worry about it, is to help to finance those groups. One of the things that my foundation will be doing will be raising money so that we can provide micro grants to those nonprofits that want to get started, that need support to expand their work, and to those who want to be able to reach a wider audience but don't have the funds or the resources to do so. All right. So I would like to go ahead and pull up one of the first schools that I grew up being aware of. So in my entire school career as a young person and in all of my adulthood, I have been aware because I grew up in this community where the Jewish community has something called a Hebrew school or Hebrew support services. They have been educating their own kids with their culture. They've also been educating their kids about their history, their religion, their values, their principles, their goals, as well as their political beliefs. And they have been doing so using not only their own funds, but also using federal funds. So I'm not sure if you're aware, but many of the Catholic schools and religious schools, just as they are created, are able to use some of the exact same funds that we use in public school. Many of our African American students in Michigan, when you look at the Michigan Board of Education and they tell you what school African American students are in by county as well as by school, and then using the larger collaboration of by state, most of our African American students are not actually attending public school. Most of our students are already attending academies. So, just like we've made a decision to move our children into academies, possibly hoping that the education would be better, the only difference between an academy and a public school is who runs it. Those schools have the same outcomes for our students when you look at Black student achievement. But I want to leverage the fact that we moved our kids at some point into an academy out of a public school because we already knew that our kids were not getting everything that they needed to get in those public schools. And just like we made that move to move them into an academy, I would like us to start to construct by strategizing, working together, and financing our own first Black ran, Black led, Black centered African American school in the state of Michigan. And I would like all of our community partners, as well as other nonprofits, to work with us and strategize to do so. Where your student goes, so do those state dollars follow them. So if your student is currently in a school district that is getting, let's say $9,000 per student, but your African American student achievement is the furthest behind all other students, then I would employ you to take your $9,000 that your student that's being invested in your student and take it to where you know that their dollars will be spent well and they will be treated as they should, and they will be able to thrive while they receive that education and receive an education that will put them in a position to start their own companies, to be the CEOs at companies if that is what they choose to do, to be able to continue to reside in Michigan after they receive their education. Michigan has a very large number of students that after they graduate, they have to leave the state because they cannot find um, either affordable housing or being able to find a position with a company that will pay them comparable to what their level of education is. Because they get an education in the state of Michigan and still compete for those positions in most corporations in this state. And they take that talent someplace else after we, the citizens of the community, have invested in them. We are not making those pathways for our students. So, whatever amount of effort that you're putting into their education, if you are not also coupling it with the ability to provide paths for them beyond elementary school and high school, then you have just spent 12 years preparing your child for a future that does not exist because we have also, as parents, not helped invest in the construction of that future. And for those parents who are out there going, well, I am engaged, I thank you. I implore you to continue to do the same thing and continue to motivate other students to do the same thing. But for those parents who have no longer been a part of your children's education, I am actually quite ashamed because if you have needed help, you have not reached out to the right people to get help. If you have needed help, you have not made that voice known. And if you have needed help, and you did not collaborate with folks so that you could get help, I'm also sad about that. There are people in your community who will be willing to support you and help you, but we will not drag you out of your own home and force you to be engaged in your child's education. So, on Real Talk, this is for every parent, but in particularly for any parent that has had difficulty being engaged or has found that you don't know how to advocate for yourself or your child in the school. I am not upset that you did not know. What is very sad is that you did not reach out to those partners in the community who do know and who can help. So if that is you, please tomorrow, this week, reach out to those organizations. Reach out to me. I am happy to help you. All right. I also want to show you all another model of how education is working in another culture. Let's see. Oh, so Black Media Voice. I understand. You said I'm not guilty of this and not looking for help. So I would say that I would hope that your child is thriving. And again, that message of getting engaged is not for everybody. Most people are probably already doing this. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me repeat what Black Media Voice said. I'm guilty of this, not looking for help. Oh, guilty of not looking for help. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yes, thank you. Thank you for being so transparent. Um, Again, this is not a position that you have to stay in. There is help that is available, and there are people working diligently to provide the support for you to be engaged. And the other part of the process, though, is if you are finding that, hey, I am overscheduled, overworked, I have a lot on my plate, then I implore you to help support those who are doing this work. If you can't physically help with doing the work, you can't tutor, you can't help with school supplies, you can't help to come to a parent teacher conference, you can't go to a school board meeting. I understand, but then I would like to see your dollars show up. I would like to see you possibly um, dial back one particular item that you might purchase for your entertainment or your leisure and invest that in helping to construct a school situation or setting where our kids can thrive. I have actually, for a long time, seen what this school could look like. One where I've seen my neighbors, the citizens that go to the Hebrew school, they are not shaken or shattered by inequity in the public school district. They are not represented when their school board or their city council issues come up because they are raising their children from birth on about what it is going to take in order to preserve those parts of their culture that keep their community strong. They buy parts of their community so that if people want to own businesses in that area, they have the infrastructure to do so. They also are in financial institutions that employ people who look like them and who invest in the things that they find important. If they see that there is a bank or other financial institution that is not doing that, they do not invest their money there. Something that all of us would do better to understand and to start to act. One of the things that you will hear my family and people who are in my circles say, are you into the comments for just and oh, thank you, Black Media Voice. I apologize for getting your quote. Anyway, okay. So we're at the 41. Okay, we're at 31 mark. We got about 20 minutes to go. I do want to take any questions that are in the chat. Let me just stop chattering. And then we're going to talk about a couple other things. I want to show the other community resources, educational resources, community already created federal and state dollars, your tax dollars, to create for their children. Unopposed, unobjected. Their children are attending these schools and thriving. They are maintaining their culture, their experience, their history, their financial position in the community, and they are doing so with the support of the public school district. So we are going to show you another school. If we can pull up our second school, I want you to just take a look. Please take notes and take a look at what the websites are. I want you all to do your own homework. Again, I'm not going to, take up a lot of your time, but I do want you to take a look at one of the other organizations. This is called My Family Services. It's a great organization. It is one of our South Asian and Indian families support community systems. They offer educational resources as well as financial resources. And they do so, again, being South Asian led, very proud of their heritage, their culture, their religion, and they do so unopposed. They do so ensuring that their families have every possible resource that they need when they get here. All right, the next one that we're going to take a look at. So please take a look at that organization. Again, it's very well organized, but very well funded. And that's what I want you to take a look at. Look on their page when they talk about who their donors are, who their sponsors are. They do so. And the people who sponsor them, the corporations who look out after making sure that their goals and their mission are met, the organizations that do so, don't talk to them about why are you doing this and being South Asian led or Indian led. How come you don't have white people on your board? How come you don't post up something that says White Lives Matter? No one questions that they have these organizations and that they support their students and that they support their families being led with that one and only mission. When we as African Americans become as future and goal minded as we see our counterparts in our community, we will start to see things change for us. They don't leave it to the public school to teach their students these things because they know how important it is. They do not send their kids to the public school to get this foundational education. It is not happening in our churches, ladies and gentlemen. The church is not going to spend every single Saturday teaching your children for free how to become entrepreneurs. Your school, your church is not teaching your children every single week about their Black history. Those things are usually done in an educational setting with an educator. Other cultures understand this. We are the only culture that seems to think that we are going to get the same result in someone else's culture in school. Don't believe me? Look at all of the religious schools that are across the United States. Many of the religious institutions understand that the public school is not going to teach their children the very core tenet of their religion that they believe in. They do not leave that to the school. They know that the school is void of that. but they do understand how important it is, and they make it a priority so that they can have that available for their students. I want us to, oh, let me just take a look. All right, what can parents do to prepare for pandemic lockdown? So one of the things that I want you to do is many of the students that I've had the pleasure of working with have found that as much as parents feel like the pandemic is the shutdowns and lockdowns are thrust upon them, kids feel the same way. The first thing to talk to the student about, and hopefully this was an ongoing conversation, but maybe it's for the first time, is where are you on every single subject? Good or bad, I just want to know where are you? And then start talking to your student about in your math class, for example, do you need help with your homework? Do you need help with your classwork? Do you need help with logging on? Is the material easy to read? Is it difficult to read? Is the material, do you need additional resources added for that material? After you've sat down and made that checklist with your student, I would like for you to reach out to the educator for that particular class or particular activity, depending on how your student is attending school. As you reach out to them, I want you to share with them what your student told you so that they are able to focus in on the things that your student needs. They see that you are participating and that they can offer those resources. That is one step. The other step is you still do need to have a schedule at home for your child. The best advice that I can give you is to have your child's home school day look as much like their in school day as possible. This will do a couple of things. It will help you organize the day. It will help them stay on task. And when they're able to go back into school, they can hopefully transition with the same type of schedule. So if the wake up time for your child to go to in-person school is 6 a.m., then you must continue to wake them up at a.m. If they have their breakfast before they were to get on the bus, then by all means, still prepare breakfast as they normally would. The most that you can keep them on their regular routine, the better it will help with any anxiety that they have around their schedule, any discomfort that they may have in getting their work done, and staying organized throughout the day. I recommend using calendars. Some people like to use a journal. Some of our moms really are really into this journaling and some of the really great resources that are out there for journaling. Do whatever fits best for your family, but keep it as consistent as you kept their normal schedule. That is going to be key. The other thing is you have to make if not daily, every other day, but at the very least, weekly communications with your student's teacher. I know that you get a lot of emails. I am inundated with hundreds of emails because I'm usually on 12 to 15 different school district websites. So I know there's a lot of emails. It's annoying. Sometimes you're sort of skimming really quick to see if it has any relevance to you. So if you're a person that doesn't like emails, then you have to be even more vigilant to communicate with the teacher directly. So just because you don't like reading emails does not mean that you just are tapped out. My recommendation is that on every other day, and I set a reminder on my phone to make sure that I call a particular teacher or a particular counselor so that I can address those concerns that my student shared with me in that checklist and go down the list so that by the end of that week, whatever their issues were or for not being able to complete a particular part of work, they are now in a position to sort of get those things and then you wrap up that week. That would be my other advice. Try to wrap up the week the same way the teachers do. Most teachers do a unit over the course of the 5 days. Each day they're getting a different part of that unit. So make sure that you are measuring and not overwhelming your child with too much work in that short classroom time. That's why I said stay really tight as you can to what their normal class changing schedule would be so that you're only covering the parts of that unit or that particular chapter and it's measurable for your child. I know it will seem overwhelming, especially when it comes to the reading material. So you'll want to pace yourself. Most of the work, hopefully, if you would like, you can ask for it ahead of time. Most teachers have done their lesson plans at least a week ahead of time, sometimes more. you can ask for what those future units are and get some guidance on how to work your child through that particular unit. It is going to take even more engagement and partnership to do so. Now, for my parents who work during the day, so it's very difficult, or who have teenagers who are actually responsible for the work, I want you to look at it as a daily progress report. In the morning, there should be some kind of schedule. When I was a kid, my mom was a teacher, so I had a daily checklist of what I needed to do in the morning, what I needed to do while my parents had already left to go to work, because my mom had to be at the school super early. And my job throughout the day was to go down through that checklist and make sure that I had done those things. By the end of the evening, my mom would check in with me and say, "Hey, I've been at work all day teaching, 500 students. So I need to make sure that you're on task. And we're going to go through and see what your progress was for the day." Um, I'm not saying that you have to sit with them through every single homework assignment, but by the end of the night, they should be able to go through a progress report, tell you what they finished, tell you what they didn't finish, providing a lot of support and help and encouragement, because again, they are going through some of these same difficult transitions as you are. So let's add a little more grace and a little more patience and have them get into a daily routine of giving you their progress report. A progress report for the day should not take more than 15 minutes. I don't want you to go on and on and on with a few hours of work, but they should be able to tell you where they are, so that when you are checking in with the teacher every other day or by the end of the week and closing out that unit, that what they've been communicating with you is also what you're able to communicate with the teacher. She can let you know that, or she or he can let you know that work has been completed according to your child's conversation with you, and you can get prepared over the weekend, maybe on Sunday, for the next unit. Any anxiety going into the next week for incomplete work, or chapters that haven't been read, all of those just carry over into a new week, which only cause more stress for you, more stress for your teacher, more stress for your student. So try to stay on that routine. And for people who don't have that kind of routine, it might be a good idea to slowly start adding it over the course of 5 days. It is not an overnight process. But your students will be more engaged when they see that you're holding them accountable. If you come home after a long day's work and you're not in a position to get that 15-minute progress report talk, then maybe it's something you do the next morning. Maybe everybody's mind just needs to decompress for the day and just sort of relax. That's okay. Just make sure that you're having those opportunities to have a discussion with your student about what their work was. As they see that you are going to be having that weekly conversation, it holds them accountable, especially for the teenagers. There are studies that have shown that students can start to be accountable for their schoolwork as young as third grade. So by the time they are a ninth grader or a 10th grader or an 11th grader, and especially a senior, they should be accountable for their work. When they see that you're going to check, they are more likely to do the work. When they see that you're engaged with the teacher, they are more likely to get their work done, and the teachers feel more supported, so they're able to look and be available to you for more resources. Um, so that is going to be really key. The other, let's see. I would love to go. Oh, this is from Black Media Voice. I would love to go more in depth with this. Can you do a separate video listing out some of the things we can do? Absolutely. I would love to do that. So I have tons of ideas, especially when it comes to time management. We are in our last, so maybe I'll go like let's go to 6:10, because there's a couple other things I want to talk to you guys about. Um, so thank you, Black Voice Media. I hope I answered your question. Okay. The other thing that I will tell you all to do is to put together a reward system. One of the things that happens in school that is very helpful for young kids, but even more important for older students, is reward systems. Now, different reward systems fit your family in different ways. It might be getting their favorite meal. It might be they don't have to do a chore in the house that week. In the school, we provide all kinds of really great reward systems, so that we encourage good behavior as well as good work, and engaged work. So we encourage you at home to find ways to do the same thing. Again, Just leaving a post-it note on the mirror in the bathroom, so when they wake up in the morning, they are getting ready for school, because again, we're still keeping that school schedule, that they see that you have seen the hard work that they're doing. You believe in their ability to get the work done. You see that they're doing a great job and they're really making an effort, and providing a quick little morning post-it note that just says, great job, I see what you're doing. It doesn't have to be something expensive, although I know your kids will love it if you do. Um, Hopefully, these are just really manageable encouragements, but put together what in your mind and in your family is a comfortable reward system. However, it works for you, just do it and do it consistently. It just really helps them through these 2 weeks if they have to be out for 2 weeks or longer. And it gives them kind of the same environment and culture that they are hopefully used to in school, when they are often acknowledged and rewarded for their good work. The other thing that I will say is bedtime and mealtime. Try to stay as consistent as you can with that as well. If your student has lunch at a certain time of the day, and if you're not sure what time of the day that is, either they can tell you, you can get their schedule off of one of the school platforms, or you can ask their teacher. Try to keep their meal times about the same. They usually have about 23 minutes to eat. So this isn't go sit in front of the TV and eat for an hour. It is, you got 23 minutes. Hopefully, you've made your lunch that morning or the night before, um, or something is already prepared that is easy. Maybe it was last night's dinner, so that you can eat very quickly and stay focused for the rest of the day. And I do discourage parents from having your students eat really heavy meals. Um, After lunch, sometimes in the school, when they've had a very heavy lunch, that sixth hour and seventh hour are a struggle. If you have ever eaten a very big meal in the evening and all you want to do is go and lay down, that is the same thing that happens to your students when they're in school. So try to keep the snacks and the lunchtime really simple, not too heavy, something nutritious, hopefully. My friends over at the either Tollgate on their website, Tollgate in Novi, MSU Tollgate has a great website for some tips. Our partners in the community with Kroger also have a website for some healthy choices. So take a look at those and get your students involved in what their lunch choices might be. And then we will go to, let me do one more part. After school activities. So another thing that your kids are missing out on are after school activities. So after school, very quickly can kind of look like just like a brain dump, right? It's just like they're done with school, they don't want to do anything. But when they're in school, normally they may have a sports activity or a club that they're participating in. What I recommend that you do is to reach out to the other club members, if you're a part of a group, and see if there's something you all can do on Zoom, or is there something that you can do by phone, whatever is helpful for you, so that you're still making those social, emotional, and community connections, and not getting too far behind on any of your civic work that you might be doing. It also will help your student to engage with other students and just have conversations, just talk, let their hair down, and do fun things. Try to avoid things like video games during that after school time. Maybe reserve those for after dinner. Try to reserve television and some of the things that are not as productive as their normal schedule, and put that into their after school hours. So and maybe it is connecting with other students on a project, or if they have an assignment coming up, have them do homework the same way they would have done homework when they got out of physical school. The last part that I will talk about is spending that family quality time together if you can. If you can have dinner together, those are always really important. I'll tell you a really quick story. When I was growing up, me and my siblings, and there are a lot of us of all different ages, of all different interests, my parents would have us sit at the dinner table and kind of present something that we had researched. Now, back then, there was no internet, so it was whatever we could research in an encyclopedia or the newspaper, but we had to come to the table to share some conversation about what we had researched. And after a while, and my dad said that he did this, thank you, Nate Sanders. My dad said that he did this because when we were younger, we would come home and he'd say, like, what happened in school today? And we talk about like all this silly gossip or all of these silly things that happened or a fight that happened. But having us be centered on a particular topic, and we could do a topic that we were interested in. So I would do music and art sometimes. My other siblings, they would do um, things that they were interested in. So I had a brother that actually used to draw comic book characters. So you could talk about whatever was of interest to you at the table, but you had to have done your research and you could present what you had found and you would have conversations with your other siblings around the table. This was so much fun. And if we didn't have topics that we want to talk about, we would play a board game during that time. And at the time, I'm just a kid. I'm not thinking about just all of the benefits of it. But what I found was it helped me and my family connect together. We had conversations that led into other conversations. Some of them were even difficult conversations that we needed to have with our parents. But these games and these conversations where we got to present an interest of ours at the table, and we'd have like index cards, you guys. We'd have art and drawings if we wanted to. I remember I was doing music one time and I was actually able to play that music at the dinner table, which when I was a kid, you could not bring music at the table. So that was like a pretty big deal. And it really is a time to sort of like put the phones in the kitchen, sit at the dining room table, and just have conversations about what they're thinking. So if you get an opportunity to do that, please do that. It is not cliche that that has leaps and bounds benefits to your children. But rather than have them always just say nothing, I don't know, I don't have anything to share. In the beginning, you can give assignments of what you'd like to know more about. So let's say your family's really into recycling. Ask your child to go and find as much as they can about how your city is recycling. Maybe your family is going to be taking a trip in the summer and, hopefully when the pandemic is done. So have each one of your children bring to the table an idea that they have researched and able to present on a short card, a particular place that they would like to visit when you go on your family trip, and maybe have everybody at the table decide who presented best and gave the most information so the family could make a vote or a decision. So you can make it fun, you can make it your own, but the idea is to have that family time that doesn't involve phones, it doesn't involve TV, and allows you to connect. I promise you, I promise you. I'm gonna promise you so much that when I get to 100 subscribers, those who put their comments about what is happening with their kids when they have these conversations at the table, I will, when I hit 100 subscribers, the first person to put a comment in my chat after 100 subscribers, I will give you $100. That's how sure I am that helping your child have that conversation by presenting some topics at the table to the whole family, and that it will engage them. It will keep them interested where they can't wait to provide more topics and share that time with you. I am so sure that it will make a difference in your family. That once I reach 100 subscribers, the first person to put a comment in there telling me how it has been working for you over these next few weeks, I will pledge $100 to that subscriber. Okay, that's how sure I am. Okay, the last part that I want to cover for how you can help your students during this pandemic time is to still make sure that you're making time for them to connect either virtually in person to an activity that they like, to people that they're used to connecting with using social distancing, vaccine, and masking, whatever your family has chosen to do, or if you're unvaccinated and you want to be masked, do so responsibly, connecting with one or two of their friends in a small group to ensure that they are getting that social connection. The other thing is to try to do something fun as a family in your community. There are so many needs that have come out of this pandemic that it may be good to do some social activities or civic activities. And lastly, bedtime. So this is usually not, there's always like this middle group. So like third grade to like seventh grade are kind of okay with getting to bed. It is the really little ones and the older kids, right? So, some key tips. One of the things that I used to do, and there's so many like books on like having a bedtime routine. It is paramount that you have a bedtime routine for all ages of your students. The younger students, you can do things like helping them to lay out their clothes for tomorrow, so that you don't have those outfit battles in the morning. And they should be dressed when they get on virtual for school. They should be dressed. You would be surprised how many of us educators turn on the screen and a student is not dressed. dressed at all or dressed for coming on camera. So please make sure that your students are laying out their clothes in the night before. If they are a student that struggles with, getting prepared in the morning, it would be great to prepare that the night before. Some kind of either hygiene or bedtime bath or shower routine is always helpful. Excuse me. Excuse me. It's always helpful because it just sort of helps them to shift the perspective of the evening. It starts this sort of wind down routine. I used to have my daughters leave their phones on the mantle in the hallway where the stairs were before they could go into the shower. One, because when they bring their phones into the bathroom and that steam all piles up in the bathroom, I know they like to hear their music, but when the steam piles up, your phone recognizes that as moisture, and it can cause your phone not to be repaired if, when they need to repair your phone, they find that the sensor that's inside has had any kind of moisture. Most people don't know that. I found out the hard way. So have them place their phones in the hallway so that, one, they are taking reasonable amount of time showers. A shower is only supposed to be about 3 to 5 minutes. A bath, I'll give you up to 30 minutes. So, if you've got a soaker, let them have their soak. This is all really helpful for a part of their bedtime routine. And really devise that bedtime routine with your students. With my daughters, they liked kind of like having all of the like special lotions and all of the really nice scented things and little things that go underneath your eye and stuff for their hair. That was all part of helping to support their chosen bedtime routine, right? And then they would have a little bit of time when they got out of the shower, out of the bath, and it was usually about 10 minutes to 30 minutes that they could go on their phone, kind of tell their friends, hey, good night. Thanks, let's hook up tomorrow and connect for this assignment, or let's talk about that later, or let me know what happened that I missed because I was having dinner or doing my homework. And so I'm not saying that they're not going to be on their phones, but manage the time. It helps to use a timer. When your kids get used to it, because again, I'm not saying this is an overnight process, they will actually kind of forget. And my kids used to forget to even ask for their extra 10 minutes sometimes. So just try it out. But after that, the phones were in our room, on the mantle, on the dresser, and they got them back in the morning. Now, this might be easier for the younger kids because the parents kind of have the authority, but for your older kids, you are going to have to put together this routine. It is not easy, but it will do wonders for their sleep over time. It will do wonders for your sleep, right? Because you will know that, hey, they're in there, they're going to sleep. So there will definitely be information on that. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes. So I did not want this to go over too much, but I will be able to do a separate video on alternative schools. Right now, we have the foundation of a few folks who are working to create another educational model for our African American students. And to get the funding together for what it looks like to educate our students. But what I do want to say is that not having an alternative is probably not wise for us. We are in a crossroads right now. As you saw on the local news today, the Voting Rights Act is having a hard time getting passed. Now, we are in 2022. A Voting Rights Act should not be difficult to pass. If we can't vote, then how will that impact our children's education? So we need to be devising a plan as well as the foundation and the structure and the finances to be able to educate our children on our terms, much like our other counterparts have done and have been quite successful at it. So yes, we will do an entire video on that. I said I wasn't going to take you past 6:10, so I just want to say thank you all for watching. Thank you. Please continue to put your questions in the chat. I will answer them as they come up. If you have questions, you can also put them on my YouTube channel. I do get alerts when you do so. I try to answer all of your questions. Please take a look at my Cash App so that you're able to donate if you would like to continue to see content related to some of the topics that I've been discussing over this last week, and share with me what topics you would like to see. I want to thank my family, my children, as well as my friends for continuing to support me and Those of you who are new to my channel, thank you for joining. Spending this time with me has been really great. I appreciate you. I do not take you for granted, not for 1 second. You could be doing anything else, and I'm glad you chose to share your time with me. I am Tia Marie Sanders. I also want to thank my producer, Ra Asset. Has been a wonderful, wonderful producer. So if we can give her a hand in the chat, I'm sure she would be very happy. And she is a content creator and also sometimes my co-host. So also look for some of the content that we'll be providing as we go into the future. Again, thank you so much for joining me. I am in the process of joining later on this evening the African American Parent Network that is getting ready for the event tomorrow, which is lifting our voices for our students in elementary school, middle school and high school. We welcome your voices and we welcome your perspective and your experience. Thank you all so much for watching tonight. I do appreciate you. Thank you and have a wonderful Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Day tomorrow.
Everybody has a story of how things became what it is.
And all of the stories that we're experiencing up to date are all based on the original mythological story.
Myths are ways of codifying profound truths.
And so in order to pass on the knowledge of these things, our ancestors began to put them in the form of stories.
Because myth becomes a way of speaking to that.
And it's all considered to be mythology because it is based on a belief.
And then we create rituals that reinforces the logic and the knowledge of the myth.
The story then goes into a ceremony that is constantly going to remind people.
That's where the rituals come in, where we begin to practice this, what they call Ausarian Drama.
This story, this African story of an African trinity, is over 6,000 years old.
There's several different pieces of that story that are in direct correlation to the story of Jesus.
Scholars know this. Why do they allow people keep thinking it's a religion unless they have an untoward agenda? And it's very clear that they've created a lot of confusion